feel good this afternoon. What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the Early Edge in our Week 11. Hard to believe, isn't it? Our Week 11 NFL Mega Preview. We do it every single Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you watching live, for those of you watching on demand, we love you as well. Now, I never thought that I'd be able to say this again or be in a scenario to say this again, but today, a very special show. Sometimes guys go on assignment. So today I go one-on-one with the great one. My old partner used to say that. Welcome in the stoic one, RJ White, everything NFL at SportsLine and the Early Edge. RJ, good afternoon, sir. Just me and you today.
Good afternoon. Looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. We got a bunch of games to get to. 4 teams this week are on a bye. By the way, smash that like button when you come in to watch the show. Really helps us grow. Falcons, Colts, Patriots, and Saints, they will be sitting this weekend. Thursday night, fascinating one, RJ. We've got the Bengals coming off really a debilitating loss to the Houston Texans late. One of the 5 last-second field goals to win a game. Then you got the Ravens also in the same boat, up 14 on the Browns. Can't hold the lead, lose, debilitating. So here's the number, 3.5. According to BetMGM, the total is 46. Both teams come in licking their wounds. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my first thoughts is, oh my God, a good matchup on Thursday Night Football. What do we do to deserve this? I mean, this late in the season, you figure every game's going to be like Titans-Texans, or Titans-Jaguars, but it is a really good one. Cincy's offense was okay despite the receiver injuries in that game. Fourth quarter interceptions were killer. But Joe Burrow, the last few weeks he's shown he's going to be fine. I don't think that we'd mark them down for that at all. The defense, however, was awful. They had a few good games where it looked like they were back. Now they're down to 31st in yards per play and yards per rush again. They couldn't stop Devin Singletary, of all people, who couldn't get anything going the week before. So that's problematic. And I believe, both their defensive ends got injured, Hendrickson and Hubbard. So we'll see their availability in this game. It's a quick turnaround. They could be more impactful than what's happening on the offensive side of the ball because they might not be able to get some stops here. Baltimore, like you said, had that late meltdown, but they had the game in hand before that. Weird deflected pick six set that up. That really shouldn't have happened. And so I'm not marking them down really. What I'm more worried about is that their defense couldn't stop Deshaun Watson in the second half. A hobbled Deshaun Watson that looked awful before the first half, took a big hit, had to go in early. Couldn't throw the Hail Mary at the end of the half. And then he all of a sudden comes out and looks like Joe Burrow, and we know that Joe Burrow is much better than him already. So I wonder if both teams are going to score points here. I'm not confused at all why this is up at 46. It seems like it could be a high scoring game. What do you want to play here? It comes down to the health of Cincy's receivers and their defensive ends. My power ratings would have the line at 2.5, but that's assuming a little bit better injury health and that the Cincy defense isn't as bad as it looked last week. So I'm probably not going to play the side here. I might look to the Ravens team total, especially if you can get it under that key number of 24. Right now, I see some books have it at 24.5, a little bit shaded to the under. So keep an eye on that. If this overall total comes down a little bit, we might be able to get Ravens 23.5. And at that point, I would take their over.
Yeah, really smart way to attack this game. EQ in the chat says the hook is so crucial. Couldn't have said it any better. If that said -3, that would change our whole perception of this game. But the 3.5 just feels like just a little bit too much. So I like the team total, and I don't mind that over either, the way both defenses looked last week. Now, let's stay in the AFC North. The Steelers are going to Cleveland. The Browns, all of a sudden, let's not sleep on them. They're laying 4, total 36.5. Pittsburgh did get it done at home. Mike Tomlin continues to shock us week after week. But this Browns team, do you believe in them now that they were able to make that comeback and get the job done in Baltimore?
Well, I've never really believed in them because I don't think Deshaun Watson has played very well. But what we saw in the second half of that game, starting to get a little bit of a believer. I'm not going to buy fully in. I believe they're a lot better than the Steelers, a team that's been outgained in 9 straight games despite their record. I think that's a team you want to look to fade. They were lucky to beat Cleveland in the first meeting. We know how that game was going to go, I think, going in. Cleveland's coming off that big win. And we're like the Pittsburgh luck box at home is just going to strike. And they're going to do whatever they need to do to win this game. And they had 2 defensive touchdowns and a 71-yard pass touchdown. That's not really repeatable. And they were able to eke out a win there. So I think you're going to get better performance from the Browns here. Their defense is still elite across the board. They battled back after Baltimore got out to a very quick start in that game. There was that Kyle Hamilton pick 6, and then Baltimore added on some more points. And Cleveland didn't give up. They fought back and they won that game. So credit to them. Pittsburgh defense 26th in yards per rush. So even though there are offensive tackle issues for Cleveland with both their offensive tackles out for the season and then DeJuan Jones also battling an injury as one of the replacements, they might not have to worry about Deshaun Watson getting pressured that much because because just hand it to the running back and let them do their thing. And the pass rush is taken out of the game for the most part. So I think if Cleveland leans on the run game here, it makes life easy for Deshaun Watson, and that they can cover this number, because I'm not a big believer in this Pittsburgh offense, especially against an elite defensive unit. I think they're going to do enough to cover here. My power ratings have this at 6, and that's with me being a little bit of a Browns hater for most of the season. I've bumped them slightly above average at this point, and I have this line at 6. So I think it's a pretty short here. You might be able to get some 3.5s in the market. If you just do look out for that and find the 3.5, I would jump all over that.
Jump all over it. Still hard to believe, RJ, isn't it, that when you look at all the teams in the AFC, just on the AFC, that this is the only division that all 4 teams are over 500. Cincinnati has the worst record. Somehow the Steelers and the Browns are 6-3. So for some reason we do so many shows, but we're sleeping on this division somehow a little bit as far as giving them respect. Do you feel that way?
Well, I think we all thought that the Bengals would get it together once Burrow was healthy, and since they were dragging at the bottom of that division, that they would make it competitive at the end. It's really surprising to see what the Steelers have done, considering their yardage numbers, like we said, in their splits. And then the Browns, I mean, that offense has been a train wreck for most of the season. So really fortunate for them to pull out some wins, a lot relying on their defense. Some fortunate matchups. I know they had it bad the other way. They had that Dorian Thompson-Robinson game where he was not ready to play, and they completely did not have a chance in that game. But then it gets paid back on the other hand when they get the one game between Josh Dobbs and Kyler Murray, when they get to face Clayton Tune, who can't move the ball at all. And they had, I think, 1.2 yards per play in that game, just a complete defensive domination. So they get a little of it both ways here. So I think Cleveland, a little bit overrated at 6-3. I would consider them more of a 5-4 team. And then the Bengals, I think, are going to be better in the second half than the first half.
For those of you that have just dropped in to check out our show because word of mouth is so big and you're saying, this might be the smartest human being as far as NFL is concerned that I've ever listened to, you would not be alone. This man is everything NFL. It doesn't matter what I ask him. Boom. Now, Jared, totally agree. RJ Steelers has been abysmal, but yet somehow they figured out a way to get W's. That's what this league is all about. 6-3. All right, game number 3, Sunday, 1:00. The Bears, they've been kind of a good story, I guess. They haven't been great. They haven't been horrible. Kind of a good story. But they're taking on one of the best stories, RJ, in the entire league. The Lions, they go on the road last week. It was punch, punch, counter punch, counter punch. And alas, one of those game-winning, end-of-game field goals, 41-38. They're laying 10. The total is 47. I'm leaning to the Detroit side because I just think they're rolling and the Bears can't keep up. Would you say I would be accurate with that?
So here's the interesting thing. I'm glad that we got this game right after you called me the smartest human being on the planet or whatever you said, because I think I'm going to throw a little bit of that out the window in this game and say there are those weeks of the season where things just go weird and go, we experience them every year. How did this happen? How did this big favorite lose? These type of things. I think that's going to happen this week. There are a number of games where you get double-digit favorites, this being one of them. A lot of these teams are playing on Thursday. So they're in these spots where they're expected to completely handle the opponent they're playing. They have a short turnaround. They have Thanksgiving week dealing with, where are we going to have the dinner? When are we going to have the dinner? Family in town, all this stuff. Have to figure all that out. And you have to play this game on a short week. And you might take the foot off the gas against an opponent that everybody expects you to beat because of the spread. So I only point that out to say this is kind of like the weird spot week, the dangerous week. Don't take anything for granted this week. There's going to be some teasers that get ruined. There's going to be some money line favorites. If you throw 3 teams in a money line favorite pool and you say there's no way this can lose, one of those teams is going to lose. So just be careful. This is the week of being careful. Now, this game in particular, Detroit's defense 4th in yards per rush, so Chicago's offense going to have success passing. And if Justin Fields is back, which we thought he might be last week, then I think they could have some success passing. He's had some pretty solid games there. Chicago's defense 1st in yards per rush, but Detroit coming off back-to-back 200-yard rushing games, got David Montgomery back last week, and then Gibbs did it mostly on his own the week before. So interesting strength versus strength here with Chicago's defense against Detroit's offense there. The recent solid Chicago defense run came against a lot of offenses that couldn't pass, and we know Detroit's offense can pass. They're 5th in yards per pass on the season. But then you come to the spot. I'm worried about the spot for Detroit. Early Thursday game next. Could be sleepy in the spot. If Fields returns, I think the line at 10 is accurate. If it's Tyson Bagent, I would make it a little higher. So I agree with what you're saying there. But just the weirdness of the spot, I think that Chicago might be able to keep it close. So if I play anything, it's going to be Chicago. But I do want Fields to be back before I play it.
No, I think that's a really, really good point. Just from a football standpoint, if you take the betting out of it, Well, let's not sleep on the fact that Detroit is 7-2, Philadelphia is 8-1. So now with 8 games to go, we're going to have to start looking at that number 1 seed, and teams are like, I just need to get in, win, and get out. So I didn't even think about what RJ just said when it comes to Thanksgiving week next week. 6 teams playing on Thursday next week. Now, our next game, Chargers laying 3 at the Packers. Now, Green Bay, they've made some games of it, but we saw on Sunday they just aren't built, in my opinion, to finish games, to run through the finish line. Now, the Chargers, you could say the same thing because they're beating teams like the Bears, but then they give up 41 points to Detroit. Total 44. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is an interesting game here. Packers also have that short turnaround, but they're not coming into this game expected to win it. They're home underdogs to a Chargers team that is not very good. The market is overrating the Chargers and has been for a long time, in my opinion. I know they have Justin Herbert. I know they have all the pieces to have a good offense. It doesn't all come together, and it's always the sum is less than the parts that you see there. Now they have a 1 receiver offense. Keenan Allen is amazing. He can do a lot, but it makes it a lot easier to defend if your defense has some solid cornerbacks, and Green Bay does. They just need to be healthy. They missed, they were beat up last week. They had 1 guy miss the game, I believe, and then 1 guy was limited. And so if they can get a little bit healthier on defense, plus Quay Walker dealing with injuries, safety dealing with injuries, I mean, really walking wounded for their defense. So keep an eye on this injury report. And if they are a little bit healthier, this is a pretty easy defense, I think, or a pretty easy offense to defend with Keenan Allen really being the funnel there, and then Austin Eckler getting the leftovers. Green Bay on offense looked like it was respectable on the road. And that's despite a poor game from Aaron Jones. We thought that Aaron Jones being out was really what was holding them back. He comes back. He actually struggled in that game last week, and they still did really well. But then Jordan Love had 2 bad picks to end the game at the end. He's the guy that everybody considers Josh Allen. They're saying Josh is never going to be a good quarterback because all his turnovers. That really seems to be Jordan Love, the back-breaking turnovers at the worst time. I don't know if you can ever fully trust him. But the Chargers defense is 31st in yards per pass. We saw that surface again against a pretty solid offense last week. And Green Bay's pass offense obviously isn't Detroit's. I think they'll be able to score points in this game. So with the Chargers power rating being average or maybe a little bit worse now, and Green Bay having one of the better home fields in the league, especially once you get later in the season, this line is way off for me. I would not be surprised if Green Bay was favored in this game. So when it crept up to 3.5, I immediately grabbed Green Bay. I'm still putting it in on this podcast at +3 as a best bet because this line should be probably pick 'em, I think, in my opinion. And like I said, my power ratings would actually make the Packers slight favorites because the Chargers aren't that good.
I thought the exact same thing. It's not very often that sports books just completely get it wrong. We talk about a point or 2 sometimes, but this, in both of our opinions, is like 3 or 4 points off, at least. All right. Now, 4 games down. I love this. I mean, no offense to Maestro, but this is kind of fun, just you and I today. But as you know, we got to pay those pesky little bills as we continue to get bigger. Here's a word from one of our incredible partners.
It's never too soon for college hoops. It's the Arizona Tip-Off on CBS Sports Network.
By the way, big one tonight. We're on Duke minus Michigan State if you're watching us live. All right, let's move on. Now you're asking the questions. Where can I play a best bet of the Packers +3? Well, I can tell you, BetMGM. And I can also tell you that new BetMGM customers can sign up today and get $200 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $10 and you'll receive $200 instantly in bonus bets, regardless of your wager's outcome with bonus code EDGE200. That is bonus code EDGE200. Now, this next game, the Giants played in a game that the over was easy by the Cowboys on their own, but the Giants threw in 17 points for good measure. But the Commanders went on the road last week. We thought it would be an over game. That's exactly what happened. It played into the 50s in Seattle. But now they come back home. They're laying 10. And this is kind of a rubber meets the road for the Commanders. If they want any shot at being relevant for the rest of the season, this week's got to be a dub. The total sitting at 37. Your thoughts?
Here's another one, sleepy spot game. They play on Thursday. They have to face the dreaded Cowboys, the Commanders do, next week. We saw what they just did to the Giants. Huge game for the Commanders if they want any respect. They're not paying attention to the Giants. The Giants are awful. Everybody knows they're awful. That's how this got up to a 10-point line. And with that defense, the Commanders should not be 10-point favorites against anyone. I have the Giants power rated as one of the worst teams the last few years that I can remember. I have it as a -10, 10 points under average. And I still would not make this line 10. I would make it 8. So Washington did play Seattle tough. That was their 4th road game in 5 weeks for Seattle, or for Washington, and at the Dallas for Thursday next. This is a brutal spot for them. Giants team, like I said, couldn't be any lower in value. It is their third straight on the road. Maybe that helps. The defense in that game last week against the Cowboys got beat down by injuries. You kept on seeing the graphic come up with who was hurt and who was out and who was questionable. And it was like, how can this team like get any injury luck at all? And I think that really helped cause the absurdly poor numbers on defense, because they had been playing pretty well defensively coming into that game. So let's keep an eye on the injury report here. And if it isn't awful for the defensive side, I think they can stay in the number versus poor Washington defense, because I don't care who's at quarterback, whether it's DeVito or Matt Barkley, throwing it to Saquon Barkley, they should be able to score some points on this Commanders defense that is not playing well. I would kind of prefer if they switch to Matt Barkley, give him a little bit of threat of passing. Not that Matt Barkley is any good or going to save their season or anything, but just Tommy DeVito does not like he has it as a passer, and they're not confident in unleashing him as a passer, really. So with this major look ahead spot, the trip to Dallas on Thanksgiving next, I would fade the Commanders in this spot now that it's all the way up to 10. Maybe we get even higher, but if I play this, it's going to be Giants plus 10, even as ugly as they look.
Mm-hmm. A lot of good points right there. By the way, guess who is in the chat? Ladies and gentlemen, the host of Inside the Lines, our brand new show here at SportsLine, Mackenzie Brooks. She says, give me Houston minus the 4. She is super, super, super smart. You have any questions for her? Put them into the chat. She will answer them for you in real time. All right, this next game, maybe a sleepy good one. The Raiders, since they made that coaching change, they're 2-0. Antonio Pierce has this team playing inspired football. So now, welcome to the show, Antonio Pierce, because you got to travel to Miami. They are upset. They just lost to the Chiefs over in Germany. So they're laying a robust RJ White, 12 points. The total, 46.5. For a Miami team, that's not a super high total. It's all about, can the Raiders score 2? Where are you at on this one?
I don't think the Raiders can really score. Their offense is 29th in yards per play. Aiden O'Connell not really legging up at quarterback. I know they're getting wins. They're getting wins against very limited teams, and you cannot trust him on the road here against a team that does have a very good home field advantage. Typically, it's early in the season when the heat beats down on these teams, and they have to play in the absolute heat with no shade on their side of the field. But I still think that they have one of the better home field advantages in the league, just historically based on the research I do every offseason. So I'm not trusting them. The Las Vegas defense, 28th in yards per rush. The Dolphins might get Devon Achane back in this game. They can expand the lead in second half with their run game, no matter who's running the ball behind that line. So Vegas and their interim coach beat up on those two offenses at home. This is a massive shift here. This is not, Miami is worlds apart. They're number 1 in yards per play, more than 7 yards per play. I am a little bit worried about the sleepy spot, like I keep mentioning. The Dolphins don't play on Thursday. They do play on Friday. They have to go at the Jets. But the Jets aren't really an opponent that you're worried about in a look ahead spot, number 1. And number 2, the Dolphins, like you said, coming off that bye. So it's not like they're turning around from a game. Now they have to worry about other stuff. They can be focused. They've been sitting, dealing with that loss for a week, ready to come take it on the Raiders. I would lean to the Dolphins even at the 12, because I think this line is maybe a little bit short, but that's probably the peak of where it is. If it gets any higher, maybe it's just playing the Raiders team total under.
To give you an idea of what RJ is talking about, the 3 games on Thanksgiving are Green Bay, Detroit, Washington, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle in the evening, and then on Friday, Miami and the Jets in the shadows of New York City. So it's a completely different schedule than we've ever had before. We've never had a Black Friday game before, but we have one this year. So we'll see how people respond to that. I think it'll be a really good rating. I think it'll be a really high rating. All right, let's get back to the NFC, because we've talked about the Cowboys a lot already, but now they've got to continue to back up, RJ, and this is something they haven't done a really good job of really for the last 25 years. They start getting some success. Oh, they're good. They're going to make a run, and then they lay an egg against a really good team. But against the bad ones, they have been dynamic. They're laying 10.5 on the road in Carolina to take on the Panthers. The total is 42. We know the Panthers have been unwilling or unable, whatever the word is, to score on a consistent basis. When you give double figures, double digits on the road, that is glaring. Your thoughts?
Yeah, another sleepy spot here. Cowboys play that Thursday game. They don't have to respect the Panthers after what the Panthers have shown. Why are they going to take the Panthers seriously?
That's right.
But we saw this happen early in the season. Well, why did they have to take the Cardinals seriously? They went into that game as 12-point favorites. They lost as 12-point favorites on the road against a team that they should have beat pretty easily. This line got inflated off the Dallas destruction of Tommy DeVito, who, as bad as the Carolina offense is, it's not that bad. Bryce Young is able to move the ball a little bit, passing the ball. Carolina's defense playing well. 4 touchdowns allowed in their last 3 games on the defensive side of the ball. Dallas When they get on the road, they're a different team. They average 17 points in their last 4 on the road. They're not the team that's scoring 40. They're doing all that at home. And then when they get on the road, it gets a little tougher there. But 17 might be enough to cover. I mean, if this Carolina offense doesn't show up like it has in the past, I mean, you can get a 20-7 type of game. But power ratings would make it 8.5, just because Panthers are, at least as bad as they are, they're competent. They're not Giants level bad. They are my 31st team in my power ratings, but still, I only make it 8.5 there. So I think Dallas could win in a blowout if they come into this game focused. They're not feeling themselves off that Giants destruction again. But just keep that Arizona game in the back of your mind before you want to lay a bunch of points with this team on the road with that Thursday game next. My lean would be to Carolina, even as bad as they've looked.
89-17, the Cowboys have outscored the Giants in 2 games this year. Absolutely embarrassing if you are the New York Football Giants. Cowboys, can you keep it going? That's the question. Now, speaking of keeping it going, RJ, the Jags were unable to keep their winning streak going. They got blown out. San Francisco said, wait a second, we're still the 49ers. We're still great. And they played like it. So the Jags back at home this week, laying 6.5. Very important game for their confidence, I believe, and their offense to say, I know we didn't score a touchdown, but we're still good. Now, the Titans come in. They also laid an egg against the Bucs because, as you've taught us many, many times right here on the early edge, that you can't take a rookie quarterback week to week to week because they don't adjust as fast as other quarterbacks. And we're seeing that with Will Levis. Your thoughts on this one?
And this rookie quarterback is now in his 3rd straight start on the road. He's not even getting the benefit of home cooking and, a favorable crowd that's excited to see him play because he might be the future there. He just has to keep on going on the road over and over. And this is a great bounce back spot for Jacksonville. 2nd straight at home after they had a bye before that. Tennessee playing all these road games. Tennessee's offense had a 3.5 yards per play against the Tampa Bay defense. That's not that great, especially defending the pass. They actually profile very similar to Jacksonville. Good run defense, bad pass defense. But Jacksonville is way better on 3rd down defensively. And so that could be a problem here for this Titans team that can't get anything consistently done with Will Levis on 3rd down. Tennessee's defense way easier to pass on than San Francisco. So I think Jacksonville's offense is going to bounce back, put up points here. We saw this earlier in the season. They had that egg against the Chiefs. They were able to get on a run against some bad teams and score some points and win some games. So against these limited teams, Jacksonville has no problem beating up with them. My ratings would only make it 7. I'm still comfortable making Jacksonville a -6.5 best bet because I think it's a great bounce back spot for them and just brutal scheduling for the Titans. 3rd straight on the road with the rookie quarterback. The only reason to be scared of this is the Mike Vrabel magic of being an underdog and always covering as an underdog. But this might even be too much of a spot for him in this situation.
I think that's a really, really, really good point. Do not look now, ladies and gentlemen, because Jacksonville, who felt like after their winning streak, they're running away with this division. Hold on a second. They are not running away with this division. Let me look at my notes. They're 6-3. Who's the team now right behind them where their quarterback has gone from around plus 4,000 down to about plus 2,000 in the MVP race? How do you do that when you got Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, all these big-time names? You ball out. And that's exactly what C.J. Stroud is doing. Another phenomenal performance 2 weeks in a row. Now, they come back home. Should be rocking, RJ. They're going to lay 4 to a Cardinals team that has Kyler Murray back, and they played in a shootout against the Falcons. But this is a Houston Texans team now. You're starting to hear all of these quotes coming out of the locker room. It's amazing what you can do when you have a quarterback. It's amazing how good that quarterback is. This is starting to be a really good, feel-good story coming out of Houston. Your thoughts?
I will point out, headline by DeMeco Ryans, a guy I love for Coach of the Year before the season. I have him a ticket for him at 20-1 to win the Coach of the Year. So hopefully we don't pay as much attention to CJ Stroud and say it's all him. We can give some of the credit to DeMeco Ryans for coordinating such a great team and really saving this team. They had the whole offensive line injured at one point, 5 starters down, and they were still throwing it without abandon and having success doing it early in the season. And CJ Stroud, now that some of those guys have come back, just looks unstoppable in this passing game. Arizona Arizona's offense looked good too. I don't want to call them unstoppable, but Kyler Murray and James Conner coming back, they had 5.9 yards per play against what's been a pretty solid Atlanta defense. I think they ranked 9th or 10th in yards per play. And my worry with Kyler Murray coming back is that he would look limited after that long layoff, dealing with that injury. But he did not. He ran around on the ground, 6 carries, 33 yards, had a touchdown, had I think another long run besides the touchdown. So he's doing solid work there with his legs. Arizona's defense had a good game. They're actually a little bit underrated. I think they ranked 20th, but if you asked everybody, they'd probably say they probably ranked 28th, 29th, because they remember all these blowouts. So I think 20th yards per play, I think they're solid, but this is a step up for them. And it's weird to say that against Houston. Houston's pass offense has kind of become a different beast with how good they are throwing the ball. Houston's defense had been solid before that wild Tampa Bay game 2 weeks ago. They are 3rd in yards per rush, so they can take away some of that effectiveness of Cardinals running the ball, at least traditionally. We'll see how they can handle Kyler Murray's run ability. But if this game does become a test of passing offenses and they're doing their job with the run defense, I want to be on the Houston side there. So I think 4 is the right number here. If it comes down any more, I would probably lean more to the Texans, but a little bit scared about what the Cardinals showed with Kyler Murray under center. But we do know when somebody exceeds expectations in that one game coming back, he's probably going to regress a little bit in the second game. So if I'm going to go anywhere in this game, it's probably going to be Houston or playing some type of over, because there's going to be a lot of points in this game.
Yeah, Edwin says, I love this Houston over. So you would like this at 47.5? Yes?
Yes, 47.5 is pretty good. I think if anything, you might look to one of the teams going over instead, and Texans, just because Cardinals are pretty solid against the run, score points. So I think the Texans are more likely to push this over than anyone. So if you just want to be a little bit hesitant on Murray and the Cardinals offense, and just play, and especially on the road, and just play this Texans over, I'd be okay with that too.
Such a smart way. Really listen. You guys come here for a reason, because you get educated, you get entertained, but you also become a lot smarter when you walk out the door. Don't just look at the two totals and the side. There's so many different ways. Every sports book, literally hundreds of different bets for every single NFL game. Now, we got 3 at 4 o'clock to get to, but before we do that, we got to hear from one more of our incredible partners. A little bonus play for you. Take UNLV. Everybody is sleeping on them. Air Force has slipped back a little bit in recent weeks. Take UNLV. All right, this game is interesting because we talked about the AFC North all being above 500. Well, the NFC South, RJ, doesn't have any teams above 500. The Saints are 5-5 in first place, but the Bucs are just a half a game back, 4-5. They travel to a team that looked amazing. Coming out their bye week, coming out 3 straight losses, the 49ers went to Jacksonville and said, wait a second, we're still it. We're still the guys. Now they're favored by 11 over the Fighting Baker Mayfields. Total, 41.5. You normally, RJ, don't have those two numbers together. Talk to me.
Yeah, interesting game here. San Francisco looked all the way back. Their struggles offensively really tied to the Trent Williams injury. I've been saying the MVP of that offense. I know everybody gives all the props to Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk for good reason. Brock Purdy, the next Tom Brady, gets a lot of that love. So much so that every undrafted quarterback and late round quarterback this year is the next Brock Purdy. They already have anointed him as a made man, I guess, and now everybody else is trying to play like him. But San Francisco, Trent Williams is the real deal, and he gives Brock Purdy time to throw the ball. They have time to execute that offense, and we saw the difference it made against Jacksonville. But the defense was really the most important part of that game. I mean, Jacksonville didn't do anything offensively. This defense had been a big part of the problem during the losing streak. They made a big deal of Steve Wilkes coming out of the booth and being on the sidelines. I mean, it doesn't seem like something that simple would matter. Otherwise, every coach would do it, but maybe it does in this situation for some reason. I don't know. Tampa Bay's pass offense a little bit better than Jacksonville's. They are top 6 in interception rate and sack rate. So they don't throw a lot of picks. They don't allow a lot of sacks. So they could do a little bit offensively here. Maybe their defense can give San Fran a little trouble in the run game because we know they're so good defensively against the run. And their secondary held up better last week too than I thought they would. I thought Will Levis would be able to come in and do at least a little bit considering the injuries they were dealing with on the secondary, and they didn't do anything. The Tennessee did not do anything in that game. I will point out again, though, sleepy spot for San Francisco. They have a crucial game against Seattle next week on Thursday. I believe it is in Seattle too. So if the focus wanes at all in this game, considering the Buccaneers, they should mop the floor with them is what this line is telling you. Tampa Bay is capable with that pass offense of getting a backdoor cover here. My power ratings would make the line a little bit higher. I don't really trust it because of the spot and because Tampa Bay is capable of these backdoor covers, I believe, with that offense. So I would lean to Tampa. I do want the line to get a little higher before I play it, though.
Not only is the game in Seattle next week, RJ, but it's at night. And we know what that atmosphere is like at night in Seattle. Can't look ahead, but it's hard not to. Now, that game's at 4:05 Eastern on Sunday, the first 4:25 p.m. Eastern game. And when I look at the wild card race currently, if the season ended today, this would be the three names that in the AFC, RJ, would be a wild card selection. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Houston. Then you keep going down the list. Cincinnati would be fourth. Indianapolis is in the fifth spot, wild card spot. And then the Buffalo Bills at 5-5. Now, the one thing that a lot of people in the chat don't realize is that, yeah, I'm diehard Chiefs. Everybody knows your Bills, but you separate. You're a professional. And there's been many times I'm like, what do you – and you say the opposite of what I think because you understand your role on this show. After last night, allowing that late field goal to the Broncos to fall to 5-5, is there even the thought process of other than we just have to get a spot at this point and figure out what we're doing wrong? Your thoughts?
Well, they fixed everything. They fired the offensive coordinator. So, I mean, the offense that is third in yards per play, I think second on third down rate, third on touchdown rate, just metrics up and down the board. Very, very good offense. That was the offensive coordinator was obviously the problem. And I've never been the biggest Ken Dorsey fan. I'm obviously completely head over heels for Brian Daboll. I hated losing him. Did not think that Ken Dorsey would be able to step into his shoes and have a similar type of role. But they actually have been an effective offense. The defense has been a struggle, a lot of injuries on that. So I'm not going to completely blame Sean McDermott for that, but he hasn't really had the winning formula either. I think if anybody's the problem, it's probably him. And maybe it's time. Maybe he's not going to win a Super Bowl with this team. Maybe you need an more offensive-minded coach to come in, take Josh Allen to the next level, turn him back into an MVP candidate because everybody thinks that Josh Allen is the problem. He has 14 turnovers, including fumbles and interceptions. Guys like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes have 10 and 11. So, I mean, you take away 3 interceptions over 10 games, and you're talking about an MVP candidate rather than a guy that people think is now trash. So I don't think Josh Allen's the problem. I don't think Ken Dorsey was the problem. I think the offense will be able to score points, even against this Jets defense. I know the Jets have had the black magic to stop them and whatever has been working the last few years. But, you know, Josh Allen got hurt in that first game last year, was still dealing with the injury in the second game, kind of beat up. He wasn't beat up in week one there. It was just a weird game with the Aaron Rodgers injury and just completely shell-shocked in some of those interceptions. But I think that the rush offense can step up. We saw a little bit of it from James Cook once he got out of the doghouse for that early fumble. The key thing here, though, is that the Jets offense is awful. They had 0 touchdowns against a bad Chargers defense, against a bad Vegas defense in the last 2 weeks. They've had 8 offensive touchdowns on the season. They haven't scored an offensive touchdown since the first quarter against the Giants, and that was a 50-yard kind of broken run by Breece Hall. That it wasn't a sustained drive. They don't have very many successful sustained drives this season. So even a struggling Buffalo defense can have success against this team. They still have good pass rush. And when you pressure Zach Wilson, he's abysmal under pressure. You saw in these national games we've been seeing. He just folds when he sees the little bit of pressure here in this game. And these Buffalo guys are talented enough to get that. The Buffalo rush defense has been a problem, but they stepped up against Denver. Denver's offense has been very good running the ball. And as a result, the Buffalo offense won the yards per play battle in that game, 7.1 to 4.2. Despite the loss, they completely dominated the statistics. You could say, okay, it was just the turnovers. They did have some bad turnovers, but those 4 turnovers only led to 6 points. So, it was just kind of a weird thing. I think Buffalo wins that game more often than not. So I don't want to adjust them down too much. And I would make this line 9.5 before that game last night. I adjusted down a little bit. I would make it 9 here. So my lean, even with the turmoil for Buffalo, is to Buffalo, even with the narrative that the Jets defense always solved them, because I think they can just go into this game, not take too many risks, and put it to this Jets team that cannot score and win a game something like 20-10.
So many different reasons why we think, and the reason it's so much discussion is because the Bills, I still think they should be in a discussion for being a Super Bowl quality team that just might not be playing up to that right now. But they still have a ton of good players. Now, McKenzie, who's always inside the lines, see what I did there? She says that the Bills lose to the Jets, our Sims have their playoff chances dropping to 8%. Wow, for a team. I mean, he was a Madden cover guy, and all of a sudden, they've got to figure this out, but they have the talent to do it, and that's the key.
The one thing,
Yeah,
and I think that all makes sense when you just look at the numbers of these teams. But you mentioned the teams that are in the wild card spots right now. It's Cleveland, it's Pittsburgh, it's Houston.
Yeah.
Houston playing a little bit over their head defensively. Offensively they look great, but you don't expect this to continue as fully as it has for CJ Stroud. Cleveland offense, kind of a struggle at times. Been very inconsistent. Everybody's been waiting for Deshaun Watson to figure it out for a year now, and maybe he just did in the second half of that game while banged up. But we still got to prove it more. And then Pittsburgh, outgained 9 straight times, even though with their record, I don't think anybody really fully believes in them. So even though some of these teams like the Bills are going to have these lower percentage-wise, maybe attack the futures market for some of these teams to make the playoffs, because the teams at the top on the wild card spots right now do not look like the strongest of teams that are going to run away with this kind of thing. So I think you have a team like the Bengals getting in. You might have the Bills circling back and getting in. Maybe another random team out of nowhere comes out and gets a playoff spot. So keep an eye on that.
Hashtag educate and entertain, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're all about right here. Quickly, here's a schedule for the Texans. Cardinals this week in Houston. Then they have Jacksonville at home. They have Denver at home. So 3 straight home games for the Texans. Then they go to the Jets, to the Titans, not horrible, home to Cleveland, home to Tennessee. Then they wind up the season at the Colts. So of those 3 teams, I'd certainly say, RJ, would you say they would have the easiest schedule of the 3 wildcard teams right now?
For sure. And then a lot of the teams behind them are going to be struggling too. The Bills, you look at their schedule. I mean, they get this game against the Jets, which I think is winnable, but then they go at Philly, tough game. They get their bye. Then they go at Kansas City, another tough game. Then they're home against Dallas. And then they have late in the season, week 18 at Miami. So hopefully Miami's not playing for anything in that game, because this team cannot go into Miami and win right now, despite what we saw earlier in the season. But yeah, it's just week after week of tough games. Then you throw a little game against the Patriots, and that we can hopefully win at the end of the season to make things a little bit easier there.
Yeah, they've got a whole brand new stadium coming, and they need that momentum back again. But this is why you play the games, right? This is why you play the games. All right, now the final 425 game on Sunday. Seahawks. We talk about, what do you call it? Not a letdown spot, but the
sleepy spot.
The sleepy spot. I like that even better. The sleepy spot. So they're going to be home against San Francisco on Thanksgiving. So they travel to L.A., beautiful SoFi Stadium. If you've never been there, I encourage you to go. It's unbelievable. And the Rams are favored by 1 here, total 46. I think I know why, but educate the people at home why the Rams are favored here.
Yeah, this is interesting. I wouldn't consider it a sleepy spot, because this is an even up team that Seattle's going to have to try hard to beat. It's not a team that they can walk in and expect to beat, especially because it's Sean McVay versus Pete Carroll. And Sean McVay 9-1 against the spread in his last 10 against Pete Carroll. And the Seattle team, which I would consider being able to overcome that earlier in the year, is looking less and less elite by the week. They're just hanging on against some of these teams that aren't great. They piled up yards against an awful Washington defense, had to settle for 5 field goals, had 1 64-yard touchdown in that game. They are not able to sustain drives, get in the red zone, score some points consistently, and that's a problem. You can't do it against Washington. There's not many teams, even the Rams, that you can count on them doing it. Their defense now down to 15th in yards per play. They're 30th on third down rate, 29th in red zone rate. They could struggle against some legit offenses. And the reason this came down was 2.5 for the Seahawks, is that Matthew Stafford is trending toward returning. And if Matthew Stafford is back, the Rams have a legit offense. 2 good weapons in Cooper Kupp, one of the best in the league, with the rapport between those two. Puka Nacua hanging around, some solid secondary options. They did score 30 in Seattle's first meeting. It was a little bit back and forth in that first half, and they dominated the second half, even with the defense that not a lot of people believe in, completely shut down Seattle in the second half. So the number for me is right based on power rating, but with Stafford, once Stafford gets confirmed back, I could see it going up a little more. And even at less than 3, I think the Rams are the clear play, just because of the history of these teams, and McVay just has Pete Carroll's number.
All right. They always seem to. It's all about matchups. We talk about that all the time. Speaking of matchups, Sunday Night Football should be fascinating. The storylines are fascinating. On the visiting side, you've got the Vikings, who, RJ, all season we've been discounting. Oh, they're not that good, or they had a bad loss here. And then we look down and we go, oh, wait a second. All of a sudden, they're 6-4. All of a sudden, they would be the 3rd wild card team right now. It's amazing what Josh Dobbs has done in 2 weeks since coming over from the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Broncos are one of 7 teams, 7, that are within 1 game of that 3rd wild card spot. It's going to be a race for these final 8 weeks, and I'm here for it. But here's the numbers. The Broncos favored by 2. The total is 43.5 for Sunday night. Your thoughts?
Yeah, not just 6-4 for the Vikings. They started 0-3. And remember at that point, everybody said, oh, the regression that we thought was coming last year, all the one-score wins, that all caught up to them. This is going to be the year from hell for the Vikings. And when your starting quarterback that you rely on heavily goes out midseason, you're like, okay, that's probably true. But they're on a 5-game winning streak, even with that injury. And they haven't beaten some of the best teams, but they have 3 of those wins on the road. It's very similar to the Jacksonville win streak when they had 5 in a row. And everybody talked the Jacksonville's praises, unbeatable. And they're going to run away with the AFC North or AFC South. And Jacksonville's really looking like a Super Bowl contender. Nobody's saying that about the Vikings. I understand because Josh Dobbs is at quarterback. You can't really say that. This is a very good coaching staff, and they're able to maximize what they do well. And Brian Flores has been a revelation on defense. That defense was completely, Swiss cheese last year. You do anything you want against them. He came in, gave them a new mentality right away. Super aggressive. Dialed back the blitzing a little bit, when he's need to throughout the season, like against the Chiefs. But they've been really strong defensively, and I don't think anybody could predict how high this defense ranks right now. And they're probably still underrated because nobody's really clocked it with some of these games. The Minnesota offense had no issues against the Saints defense that a lot of people think are pretty solid. In the second quarter, Josh Dobbs executed 3 touchdown drives of 75 plus yards. To have that in one game, that's some elite offense type of stuff. And so if he can, bottle that and break it out regularly throughout a game, they're going to score some points down the stretch here. Denver's defense was historically bad to start the year. They have been improved when we saw it against Buffalo, limiting their point total. We saw it in those 2 games against the Chiefs, even though extenuating circumstances with the weather the first game, Patrick Mahomes' illness the second game. So there is something there. I just don't think they're as bad as they looked in the first half of the season, even though they aren't as great as they've looked in some of these games that allow 7.1 yards per play at the Buffalo again. Not a great performance there. Offense solid. Russell Wilson looks like a completely different quarterback now that Nathaniel Hackett isn't calling the offense there. They're typically better at running the ball. Minnesota's defense 5th in yards per run. Denver's offense also 29th in sack rate. So that Minnesota defense that brings constant pressure can get home and rattle Russ a little bit. I think this line is about right. Look out for Justin Jefferson. If he is trending toward playing in this game, I'm probably going to look to Minnesota because I think they can go in a tough road spot and win the game just with this dynamic of this team that they've shown. When they play some really good teams, it's going to be tough for them to win games. But I don't think the Broncos are one of those teams. I think they can go in and win this game.
I don't think people understand how hard it is as a quarterback of an NFL team or a college team to get the team to be behind you. How much harder is it, RJ, when you do it by being traded in the middle of the season? Everything's different. You come in and do this. How impressive just what they've done the last 2 weeks is it to you?
It's very impressive, but this is nothing new for Josh Dobbs. This is the place he's had success, but he came off the street and signed with Tennessee last year, and within, I believe, 10 days, he was starting a game. Now, they did not cover that game. It was on the road against the Cowboys. They were the 12.5-point dogs, I think, in that game. Only lost by 14. He didn't make an embarrassment of himself. He came in on short notice, learned the offense, was able to execute, and then the next week was on track to get the Titans to the playoffs, except for there was a late fumble in the fourth quarter. Josh Allen scooped it up, not my Josh Allen, the Jacksonville Josh Allen, rushed it all the way back for the touchdown and won a close game. I believe it was 20-16. Tennessee was on track to win that game. Not a great offensive performance by Dobbs, but did enough to put them in position to win. Then you fast forward to this year. He gets cut, or he gets traded to the Cardinals at the end of camp. He has 10 days to come in and learn the offense there, 2 weeks or something, and gets named the starter, comes in competitive right away. Everybody that had Washington in a survivor pool, myself included, was almost had a heart attack in that game because they went out there and they competed with Washington and almost won in that game. The next week, they completely took it to the Giants for a half, dominated them completely, and then Giants were able to rally back and get a weird win there. And then the next week, they went on and they beat the Cowboys, a team that was favored by 12. This is on completely little notice that Josh Dobbs is doing this. Then you get to this time, your Cardinals know that they're getting Kyler Murray back. They're ready to get something for Josh Dobbs, move him to a team that needs him in Minnesota. This is his best supporting cast that he's had out of those 2 spots. Now he has some pass catchers he can throw to. He has a pretty strong defense, and he's going to get Justin Jefferson back at one point. You thought he was good before. Wait till he has Justin Jefferson and just throw the ball up and take some double teams, and then he can run around with his legs and make some plays there. So I think this is a playoff team right now. I bet them to win the division before the season, to take a little bit of regression off the Lions. That obviously did not happen. I think the Lions are going to win the division, but I think the Vikings are live. They're playing really good football right now with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. So I would take them at +2. I think this line is going to go down, like I said, when Jefferson's ruled in. So I'm going to look at this line and hopefully get to play them as an underdog here.
Yeah, a full game and a half lead right now over Tampa Bay and Washington for that third and final wild.
The week I keep saying sleepy spot. This is the week I think some teams that have some of these teams that they haven't used, a Dolphins, a 49ers, they're going to use them, and some of these teams might lose, and might get this field cut in half at least, and get down to 3-digit numbers here and have a chance to run it. So we'll see. It's going to be some tough spots. We've used a lot of the good teams. We're going to have to rely on a team like Pittsburgh at some point, rely on Houston to win one of these spots at home.
Brutal.
But I think we have a good shot to get there.
My God, think about that. Over 1 million people, and they're down to 1,600. Gosh, my guys are so good. I keep telling you that. I can't tell you enough. Now, by the way, a couple of you asking, saying, I hope Maestro's okay. He was scheduled to be off today. We have 1 million different jobs here at CBS. So he was on assignment. He's fine. He'll be back. No big deal at all. All right, final game of the week, and we've been waiting all season for this one. A Super Bowl rematch in Arrowhead. It's the Eagles. It's the Chiefs. It's Kelsey versus Kelsey. It's the number one team in the NFC against the number one team in the AFC. It all matches up. Chiefs are favored by 3. Total is 46. Now, both teams, RJ, haven't looked great the entire season, but they have learned to do what you have to do in the NFL, and that is win football games. But now, rubber meets the road. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I have bets on both these teams to go over 11.5 wins. So if we can find a way to get both of them a win in this game, I would be very happy for that. But I think the Chiefs are the much better team here. Their offense and defense are top 5 in yards per play. Philly is 11th and 19th respectively there. Kansas City's offense also first in sack rate. They don't give up a lot of sacks, obviously, with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's able to avoid some of that, and that will slow down the Philly pass rush and give him a chance to attack the secondary that frankly has not been playing very well the last few weeks. I know Philly's 8-1. I'm a big backer of them. I have them a lot of futures bets. I bet them 5 straight weeks. I picked them for the contest that I'm in. I was backing them, but this team to me looks like it's something a little bit wrong there. We'll see if they got it fixed during the bye defensively. They need Hurts back to full health to create first downs with his legs here because Kansas City's defense second in sack rate while Philly's offense is 18. So if he's not able to have the same mobility and he's back there taking sacks, it's going to be a little bit of a problem in this matchup where you have to be at your best. Can't count him out though. He came into that run last year in the Super Bowl hurt, and we didn't know what Jalen Hurts to expect coming into the Super Bowl because he didn't have to do too much in those games running up there. They were dominating teams with their defense largely in run game, and he was awesome. I think he probably outplayed Mahomes in the game, even though they lost. And so it was really good stuff from him. We'll see if that Jalen Hurts shows up in this game. If he does, Eagles probably win it. I think 3 is the right number. The time to get in on the Chiefs was 2.5. Philly's defense just being 25th on third down and 26th in the red zone really scares me from playing them at +3 because Mahomes just might throw it all over them and run up the score if they did not get their issues fixed defensively. I don't expect the number to get higher though. So 3 is probably where it's locked in. Chiefs are probably a little bit higher tier than the Eagles despite the record there. So I think Chiefs is probably the way you got to look in this game, but I don't love it because we know that Jalen Hurts that could show up from the Super Bowl last year. If he shows up, they're going to really have a live chance to win the game.
No question. That's what makes this game such a fascinating one. Now, today on the morning show, RJ, we talked about the MVP odds. And right now, Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes are tied at +300. I played CJ Stroud a little sprinkle yesterday as he dropped. He was once at +5,000. Now most books is +2,000. Do you still think that Hurts and Mahomes should be the leaders in the MVP race?
Yeah, I think probably. I think their teams are number one in the league right now. In their conferences, and a lot of it is down to them. It's not like they're playing bad. It's not like they're getting carried. Like I think Brock Purdy and the 49ers quarterbacks in general were last year, especially when McCaffrey came to San Francisco there. So I do agree with that. It's going to take some losses, I think, for them to take a little step back. Jalen Hurts, frankly, should have won it last year. He had that injury late in the year. He was on track, I think, to win it before that fell apart because he missed those last 2 games, and then he came back less than 100% in that final game there. But I thought if he stayed healthy, he would have won it there. And he's just going to rack up, first downs with the brotherly shove and touchdowns and with his legs. And that passing game looks elite with A.J. Brown running things there. So really gutted for them that they lost Dallas Goedert for a few weeks with his injury. We'll see if they can replace that because he's a very important valve to teams that could do a little bit on cornerback and slow down these receivers, even a little bit. I know you can't slow down A.J. Brown. He has something like 125 yards in 6 straight, but at least take Devontae Smith out of the game. You at least have that outlet with Dallas Goedert. Now you don't have that for a few games. We'll see how they compensate for that. But Patrick Mahomes is obvious. Statistically, he hasn't been as good as he has in the past, and I think there's a little bit of voter fatigue there. So unless the Chiefs win the rest of their games, run away with it, and they're like the best team in the league at 15-2, I don't think the voters are going to want to vote for them. They're going to want to pivot to somebody like a Jalen Hurts, like a Tua if Miami runs away with the AFC East because Buffalo's struggling. So I think look to those type of guys and get a little bit of freshness in there rather than the voters keep going back to Mahomes.
I would love for them to shock the system and vote for C.J. Stroud if he goes bananas the last 8 weeks. By the way, Big Cheesy, I see you. I see you. Snake's got that finger on. Oh! I see you. All right, grab your paper, grab your pencil. Here's the recap. 2 best bets for R.J. White. Explain yourself.
I have the Packers +3. That line is way off to me. I would not be surprised if the Packers were favored in that game when the line came out. So the fact that you could get the Chargers at -3.5 and get fade them with Packers +3.5 is crazy to me. I think that the Packers are at least close enough to the Chargers with their home field advantage that it should be a close game. So take the Packers +3. Jaguars -6.5. The line isn't terrible, but this is such a great spot for them. Second straight home game. They're going to bounce back well after being embarrassed last week in Tennessee, just rolling through their 3rd straight road game with a rookie quarterback. Going to be very tough for them.
All right. So those are your 2 best bets. Keep an eye on these lines as we move throughout the week. The reason we give them out on Tuesdays is because we feel like there's a lot of value before we get to Sunday. It's kind of fun just one-on-one with RJ. You guys can see how much knowledge the man has. The Maestro will be back next week. No issues whatsoever. So with all that being done and all that being done, I don't even know what I just said. There's only one thing left to do. And I believe you all know what that is. You've got your marching orders. Let's take all of these NFL tickets straight to the pay window. Brian Tiger, level, the stoic one, R.J. White. Our executive producer, the snake, always hovering on the 1s and the 2s. I am simply the coach. We do this every single day, every weekday, 2 shows. Every Sunday, 2 shows. Saturdays, we ease it off just a little bit. We grind for you so we can win with you. Is truly what we're all about. Thanks for hanging out with us on a Tuesday afternoon, no less. Right here on the Early Edge. Good luck.